support. And but first and foremost, I also want to thank our panelists here. Let's all thank them. And I think it's 2 o'clock, so let's get started, okay? So we have some wonderful panelists here, and I don't know, do you guys want to introduce yourselves? And then we can go from there. And we're going to have a little Q&A session as well. So if you need cards or anything, we have little note cards and pencils available, both, and we can pass them around as well. But when it gets to that time, we'll pass it around and such. But I hope you guys enjoy, and let's all learn some cool stuff.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here. It's exciting to be here. But honestly, you guys are the ones that deserve the applause. You guys are the ones that deserve the applause for coming out today and reaching out to hear about your Muslim neighbor. Hear about your Muslim neighbor. Speaking for ourselves, meet your Muslim neighbor. So why did we put this together? Speaking for ourselves, come and meet your Muslim neighbor. So there's a story about this father who used to tell his son. And it's a story about a lion and a boy. And every day, the story would end and the boy would catch the lion. The boy would catch the lion. And so one day the son asked the father, he said, "Father," he said, when is the lion ever not going to be eaten? When is the lion ever not going to be eaten? He says, "Son, when the lion tells his own story." So, here is a panel of 5 of your average Muslim American neighbors. And we got together after the San Bernardino tragedy to say, you know what? We want to speak for ourselves. We want to show a true image, a true picture, a true representation of what Islam is. And so we put this together. And it's only successful and effective if people like you come out and reach and extend their hand. So I want to take this moment and acknowledge that you guys coming here today is a true, meaningful, heartfelt reaching out to your fellow Muslim neighbors, and I want to give you some applause. I mean that. So I don't just say welcome, I say thank you. So my name is Mehdi. I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for about 12, 13 years. I work for Naval Corporation. I'm also a father. My most difficult job is being a husband. Joking. My wife's not here. I am also a chaplain and a teacher. I graduated from the first ever accredited Muslim liberal arts college in the Western Hemisphere. It's located in Berkeley, California. It's called Zaytuna College. Here's a pen, Zaytuna College. So I graduated from there about 3 years ago. And so now I practice law and work in the community as well. Again, so today the panel, we all have different topics to address. And we have a Q&A session. There are note cards. And please, let's make today meaningful. And bring your heart, bring your mind, and let's connect today. Let's just not connect in this beautiful space, in this beautiful room. Let's connect with our minds and let's connect with our hearts. So our first panelist is Hina, and she's our myth buster. I call her a myth buster, and we arrange it this way very purposefully. So Khan-Mukhtar and Mike go first and second respectively, followed by Dr. Asad and Sara. And we arranged it that way because Hina and Mike will attempt to move some of the false ideas that are associated with Islam. And so we need to clear some of that junk out of the way before we can then have an open mind to listen to Dr. Asad and Sara, who can then fill up that space with something that's true. So Hina is an active community member. She's a teacher, she's a speaker, she's a writer, she's a principal for the homeschool co-op in Lafayette, California. I would venture to say her most difficult job is being a wife. I know her husband, so it's okay, I can say. So without further ado, please welcome Khan-Mukhtar.
Thank you very much. So the reason we're here today and why we're so grateful that you all came out to join us is because we have the awesome responsibility of trying to create a significant shift in people's understanding of Islam and Muslims. And it's no small task given what's out there in the media these days. I want to make it clear just from the get-go that we're not here to proselytize. Although if anybody has any questions or if their curiosity is piqued about Islam afterwards, we're more than happy to answer any questions. And nor is our goal today to give our own personal opinions about politics or current events or even different aspects of Islam. So we're not here representing all Muslims, just as many Muslims as you will meet in the world, that's how many different stories and perspectives and points of view that you're going to meet as well. But the perspective that each of us here on the panel share is that we're all committed to what is called traditional Islam. So just like any other religion, you'll find many splinter groups or different sects. I'm sure there's people here who've heard about the Ahmadis and the Aga Khanis and the Nation of Islam. So all of these groups, at their onset, they started with the original traditional teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But their core beliefs and their tenets have changed so much over time, to such a degree that they are virtually unrecognizable when you compare them to Orthodox traditional Islam. And the five of us up here, we practice Orthodox traditional Sunni Islam. So the first myth that I have around 15 minutes, and I want to give each of the myths that I'm going to cover 2 myths its proper time. So some of the other common myths that come up in interfaith discussions, I'm hoping we'll be able to cover them during Q&A at the end. So feel free to ask any questions. There's nothing off the table. So the first myth that I often get asked about is Sharia. Sharia, is it coming to take over America? And a few months ago, I spoke at a church in Danville. There was a lady who stood up and was really distraught and very upset. And what she was asking about was, or what she was saying that she was upset about was that the fact that Sharia had come to America, it had taken over the court systems, and that the judges and lawyers were now having to rule according to Sharia. And I didn't know where to even begin with that. Like, there was just so much to unpack. But at the bottom of it, what I understood was that there was some real fear there, and some real misunderstanding. And especially if we're getting all of our news from stations like Fox News, then Muslims today are the boogeymen. We're the bad guys, and the way to convince people that for propaganda is to say that these people are coming with their different way of thinking and their different way of believing, and they're coming over to take over our way of life. So nothing could be further from the truth. And so I wanted to kind of give a brief overview of Sharia, and what it is and what it isn't. So Sharia, simply put, is a moral code. People think of it as a legal code, but before it's a legal code, it's actually a moral code. Sharia is more concerned with sin than it is with crime. And Sharia applies to Muslims, not to anybody else. And so, for example, if I tell a lie to my friend, I know that there's no earthly law that's going to hold me accountable for telling a lie, but I understand that I will be held accountable by God unless I repent and change my ways. So Muslims worship God with their mind, their bodies, and their souls. And Sharia deals with the physical aspect of our lives. So Sharia defines all the aspects of a Muslim's conduct and actions, and dictates everything from what we eat, to how we dress, to how we worship, to the rules of marriage and divorce, the rules of financial transactions and inheritance, to what's forbidden, to what's recommended by God, what's required of us. So one thing people may not realize is that Islam actually does not allow for anarchy. It doesn't allow for chaos. And Muslims have to live under some form of government, even if it's not a Muslim one. And they're required to respect the laws of the land. If they're not happy with the laws of the land, and if they cannot practice being a Muslim in peace and safety, then Sharia actually requires that they migrate, that they leave that land. So the highest law of the land in the United States of America is the Constitution. And so Muslims, by their own Sharia, are actually required to respect the Constitution. And I thought it was interesting when I was learning different facets of my faith. I learned from one of the Muslim scholars that if a Muslim purposefully even runs a red light, we're supposed to ask God to forgive us for doing that, because the understanding is that we broke a law that we had agreed to follow. And but what I know that when people hear the word Sharia, what they automatically are thinking about are penal code punishments. So what about penal code punishments, right? We have these images of like whippings and stonings and beheadings. And so yes, there is penal code punishments in Sharia. Just like with American law, there are capital punishments for certain offenses. But the important differences between capital punishment in American law and in Sharia law are two. The first is that the penal code is first and foremost meant as a deterrent. It's not actually meant to be implemented. It's meant to really explain the severity of the sin. The second is that the evidence required to establish proof of a punishable crime makes the punishment almost impossible to implement. So for example, the penal code for adultery is death, according to Sharia. However, the evidence required to prove adultery is that 4 witnesses have to actually witness the act as it's happening. So as you can see, the punishment is there to explain how severe the sin of adultery is in Islam, but it's really there more to make sure that it's not happening out in the open, it's not becoming the norm in society. Now, if we want to look at how Sharia is implemented, we can look at the Ottoman Empire, which was the last legitimate Muslim government that ruled a large portion of the world for almost 700 years. The punishment for adultery in those almost 700 years was implemented only once. And even after that one time, the scholars protested it, and it never ended up being repeated again. The other very important fact for people to understand is that according to Sharia itself, the laws of Sharia can only be applied and upheld when there's a legitimate Muslim government in power. So a majority of the Muslim scholars today are in agreement that no such government currently exists in the world, and therefore there's no official body that has the authority to implement penal code punishments, which, by the way, only make up 0.1% of the entire body of Sharia law. So when you see those horrific images on the internet or hear stories of those types of punishments, you should know, just like most Muslims know, that that is actually vigilante justice. There's no authority for it, it's not sanctioned in Islam, and it's actually forbidden by traditional Muslim scholars and jurists. So before moving on to the second myth, I want to share with you what are called the maqasid of Sharia, meaning the principles or the foundations of Sharia. We believe, as Muslims, that all Sharia laws are divinely inspired, and therefore they're the perfect set of laws for mankind. Upon close study of Sharia, one will find that each and every part of Sharia is meant to protect one of 6 things, and I'll just go through those 6. The first is the right to religion. So, according to Sharia, you cannot force anybody to convert or force anybody to believe a certain religion. The second right is the right to life. You can't kill anybody unjustly. The third is the right to family and lineage, meaning that we have the right to know where we come from. So that would be the reason why in Islam, according to Sharia, sex is confined to marriage. The fourth is the right to honor, meaning we can't slander or backbite or tell lies about people. Tabloid journalism is something that traditional Muslims don't even understand how it would be allowed in a society. The fifth is the right to intellect and reason, meaning anything that affects your intellect is prohibited. So that would be why Muslims don't drink alcohol. However, there's nuances to Sharia. So when it comes to surgery, anesthesia would be allowed. And the sixth is the right to property. So we can't steal, we can't usurp people's wealth, we can't cheat anyone out of what's theirs. So all of the rules of Sharia, if you look at those rules, they will be protecting one of those 6 rights. Okay, so the second myth is that women are oppressed in Islam. Are some Muslim women oppressed? Yes. Do some Muslim majority countries have a culture that is oppressive to women? Absolutely, yes. Are there stories of domestic abuse in Muslim households? Yes. But does Islam teach, condone, or in any way support the oppression of women? Absolutely not. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The best of you are the ones who are best to their women." And the majority of the focus of his last sermon, before he passed away, was on the rights of women. Muslims believe in the story of Adam and Eve. However, in Islam, Eve is not held accountable for Adam's mistakes. They're both held equally responsible. She's not the one to blame, she's not considered to be a temptress, and she's not considered to be the reason mankind lost paradise. That's a big shift in understanding of women. So there are a few reasons that Islam gets a bad rap when it comes to its views of women. The first is what you just see on the surface. So the headscarf, the hijab. Hijab often gets translated as headscarf, but the word for headscarf in Arabic is actually khimar. Hijab actually means barrier. And what it does is it establishes boundaries between like how you interact with one another. It's the first thing people see, and they often don't understand it. They usually don't associate the headscarf with the Virgin Mary. And they usually wonder, well, why do women have to wear the hijab and the men don't? Men also have parts of their bodies that they're required to cover, and women have parts of their bodies that they're required to cover according to the divine in our understanding of traditional Islam. So for women, we cover, those of us who practice hijab, women cover everything but their hands, their face, and their feet. The men are required to cover from the navel to the knees. So meaning they can't be wearing Speedos or itty-bitty shorts, they can't wear anything that shows their belly buttons or their kneecaps. So why are there different rules? Our understanding is that God created us, He understands us best, He knows what's best for us. Even here in America, there's different rules. If a man and a woman are jogging down the street, and it's, they get hot and sweaty, the man can take off his shirt and he can run topless down the street. He won't be arrested for public indecency, but the woman can't. She can't run topless down the street. Why not? Why are there different rules? Why are there different limits for what can be covered and what can't be covered, what can be uncovered? So, part of being a Muslim is submitting to knowing that you don't necessarily understand all the reasons, but you obey the rules that have been given to you. The second thing people see, and they may get confused by, is when they look at the congregational prayer, when you see the Muslims praying in rows, they see the women praying behind the men. And they, you come to it with a framework of like Rosa Parks. Why, Rosa Parks was forced to the back of the bus. So that must be what's going on here, women being forced to the back. That's not how women tend to understand praying behind men. If you look at the Muslim prayer, it's actually very intimate. We pray shoulder to shoulder, we stand, we bow, we prostrate on the ground, our bottoms are up in the air. It's very intimate. And you want to focus on your relationship with God. And for many women, you won't be able to focus on your relationship with God if you know there's a man standing right behind you while you have your bottom up in the air. So this is really about privacy. it's about modesty, and it's about being able to focus on your prayer. Where you stand in the prayer, by the way, doesn't have any indication of your closeness to God. So if somebody's in front, someone's in behind, that doesn't make any difference. If you want to look at any religion and see how they view women, really what we should be looking at is, do men and women have equal access to God? Do they have equal access to getting to paradise and to getting to God's divine pleasure? And then the third reason that people have this opinion of women being oppressed in Islam is really confusing how women are treated in certain countries like Saudi Arabia, and then thinking that that's how Islam views women. The fact that women cannot drive in 2017 in Saudi Arabia is due to a Saudi law. It's not due to an Islamic law. The holiest cities in Islam, Mecca and Medina, are in the land which is currently known as Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia itself doesn't hold authority over the world's Muslim population. And so, Iran's vice president is a woman. Muslim women have been heads of state. We're still trying to shatter that glass ceiling here in America. But it's important to understand that there's a whole spectrum of how women are treated in the Muslim world, and Saudi Arabia is not the definition of it. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand the mic over now to Dr. Asad. Okay.
Thank you, Hina. Appreciate that. Any guesses? It's very interesting. I see this year, 75 years of women's empowerment. That makes me very happy because I have 3 daughters. Yes, it's interesting. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and all the prophets, peace be upon all of them, about 15 centuries ago, when he came and was sent by God, he was sent, and it was a time where they would bury their daughters alive. He was sent where infanticide, and they would bury their daughters alive. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a game changer. He was a paradigm shifter. When his daughter would enter the room, and he was standing he was sitting with a group of men, the Prophet, peace be upon him, would stand up, kiss his daughter on the forehead, and invite her to sit in his seat. This was the message of Muhammad, peace be upon him, changing the paradigms, uplifting the people, changing the people. He adopted a son who was black. His nanny was black, and he said, "She's my mother after my mother." And he appointed to very high positions people who were former slaves, and they were black, leaders in different positions. So he was changing these paradigms all the time. And women at that time could inherit, could own property, could establish businesses. They could vote, participate in the political process. That was all as a result supported by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Centuries ago in this world, in our human story, that's what was happening 15 centuries ago. Our next speaker, Mike Kim, will continue along the lines of Hina, continuing to clean up some of the myths, continue to clean and cleanse us a little bit from some of the false ideas, as well as share some other ideas with you. Mike is a graduate of the Naval Academy. He has served in the armed forces, and he is involved in real estate. Does anyone know how many Muslims serve in the U.S. Armed Forces? About 4,000 Muslims. Does anyone know which group? Studies have shown that Muslims report more suspicious activity than any other group. According to the FBI, only about 6% of terrorism is by Muslims, according to the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation. So without further ado, please welcome Mike Kim.
Good afternoon. Thanks. So before I continue, it's a pretty heavy subject, right? Refuting ISIS and talking about jihad. So I want to, the story is really tied to how I came to Islam itself, so let me spend a couple of minutes sharing with you my story of how I came to Islam. So growing up here in the Bay Area and through my years at the Naval Academy, the last thing I wanted to do was be a Muslim. I just thought it's a religion of terrorists, they're the enemy, I want nothing to do with them, and that was the end of the story. Okay? So I certainly have empathy for your average American who's subject to the mass media and the going on in the world and forming their opinion of what Islam is through mass media. It's entirely negative, so I empathize because I was once there as well. But as a freshman at Annapolis, we were given this assignment, and the assignment was to summarize the biographies of all the eminent scientists, philosophers, mathematicians in the Western civilization. So I found myself in the library, thumbing through some books, pages, and I read a passage that literally jarred me. And the passage stated that these eminent scientists and philosophers and mathematicians were all believers in the transcendental or universal, which is an academic term for God, right? And that in fact, that the prime motivation of the respective work was in fact to understand the created universe. So that was an astonishing statement because nobody had ever told me that the most revered and widely studied and respected minds in the Western civilizations were believers in a God, and that their life's work were inspired by the desire to know the created universe. So that essentially launched me on the quest. And through my years at Annapolis, I continued to read, debate, study, and search out answers to this concept of God and religion. And throughout that quest, I developed a list of criteria for which I felt strongly that revelation had to be ahead of all scientific discoveries. I felt that important that revelation needed to be superior to the collective wisdom of man, be it philosophy, sociology, economics, whatever. That anything that was revelation had to be better, simply said, right? So that's the standard that I held fast, and I went around the world and studied and researched different religions, and none of them really did it for me. But another component of my research had to do with the just war concept, because as a naval officer, it was our primary profession, which is warfighting. And conflicts and wars are some of the most brutal things that the human being can engage in. And without applying the moral code to armed conflict, soldiers would be subject to losing their minds on the battlefield. The mere brutality of war is counter to the human nature. We are not human beings, animalistic predators. But there are times when conflict is necessary. And that when we do engage in war, it is of the utmost importance that one engages in armed conflict with some guidance and universally accepted code of honor. What many people today refer to as the just war concepts. So I spent a lot of time studying that. And in researching the world's major religions and what it had to say about such matters, it was interesting that Islam had a lot to say about it. Okay? And in the Quran, it says the following: permission to fight is given to those against whom war is made, because they have been wronged. Those who have been driven out from their homes unjustly, only because they said, "Our Lord is God." So God, in fact, does have an opinion on the war. And what does He say? He says that fighting should be done defensively and as a protection against those who are being attacked. The next part is a little bit more telling. In this case, and if God did not repel some men by means of others, there would surely have been pulled down temples and churches, synagogues, and mosques. So defensive fighting is primitive. Why? To ensure that all people are free to worship their Lord. Notice it doesn't say only mosques, but rather it says fighting is sanctioned in order to protect temples, churches, synagogues, and mosques. Basically protecting the rights of people to worship. That's in the Quran. So my curiosity was piqued, and I was eager to find out more about the teachings of Islam, especially as it related to war. And as I searched, I discovered that not only was the concept of war addressed in the Quran, But the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, peace be upon him, also taught his followers about this as well. I discovered that Muhammad was, among many things, a commander of armies. Again, this was an interesting finding. Why would a man of God be a commander of armies? What I came to understand is that Muhammad was sent by God as the final messenger for all times and all mankind, whereas prophets before him were sent to a specific group for a specific time in history. Through him, Muhammad, we are taught God's message in literally every aspect of human life. How to be a parent, husband, son, brother, businessman, student, a teacher, and yes, a warrior. All of this in addition to how we should worship God through prayer, fasting, and reflection. So conflict is an inescapable part of human activity. And Islam came to put limits on it and put controls on it. I'll give you one example where the Prophet, peace be upon him, gave these following specific instructions before his soldiers went to war. He said the following. He said 10 instructions, and is codified and followed to this day. One is, do not harm women, children, elderly, or the sick. 2, do not commit treachery and never mutilate or disfigure. 3, do not uproot, cut down, or burn trees. 4, do not harm any livestock except for food. 5, in combat, avoid striking the face, for God created all of us in the image of Adam. 6, do not kill the monks in monasteries, do not kill those sitting in places of worship. 7, do not destroy the villages and towns, do not spoil the cultivated fields and gardens. So in other words, you can't starve people in war. There are stories of where the Prophet Muhammad, his armies would actually send food to the opposing army because they ran out of food. 8, do not wish for an encounter with the enemy. Pray to God to grant you security. But when you are forced to encounter them, exercise patience. 9, no one may punish with fire except the Creator. So strictly speaking, in Islam, weapons of mass destruction of any type, chemical, nuclear, napalm, all of those will be forbidden because they're fire-based form of weapons. And 10, accustom yourselves to do good if people do good, and do not do wrong even if they commit wrong. So again, reminding people that you have to preserve your humanity even in conflict. So you can't lower yourself to doing terrible things and committing things that you shouldn't do as a human being. And conduct yourself with honor and integrity even in combat, to walk away with humanity intact. So that gives you kind of a taste of my background, how I came to Islam and how I studied the concept of just war. And what does Islam say about jihad? So jihad is in the Arabic term, has really no association with the concept of war. Jihad comes from the root word jud, meaning to make an effort or exert oneself. So the real meaning is to exert oneself in the way of God. So all of you do it today. When you refrain yourself from lying, cheating somebody, that is the essence of jihad. It's such a noble concept in Islam that some people name their child jihad to this day. So, and also this concept of holy war. Muslims do not consider war holy. So this holy war is just a foreign concept in Islam. There's nothing holy about war in Islam. So when war is necessary, as I mentioned earlier, the teachings of Islam really tries to put limits on it as opposed to expand it, if you will. And there's a concept of greater jihad and a lesser jihad in Islam. The greater jihad, I'll give you an example by sharing 2 stories. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the best jihad is to speak truth to a tyrannical leader. So speak truth to power, right? It's the best form of jihad. In another instance where a young man came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and asked for permission to join the military. And the Prophet's response was, perform jihad by serving your parents. So those are examples of the greater jihad. The lesser jihad is actual conflict, implementing all the elements of just war that we discussed. ISIS. So, ISIS, as Hina mentioned earlier, is really considered a splinter vigilante group in Islam. That there's no theological basis for their actions. much needs to be said about them other than, through the geopolitics of the world, there was a power vacuum in that part of the world. It was filled by a bunch of thugs and criminals. Not much different than if, Russia were to come here and remove our security apparatus and military. Who would fill our power vacuum? The Mississippi militia or the Michigan militia. And they would be called in some part of the world as terrorists. So that's really, it's a geopolitical phenomenon rather than a religious phenomenon. A young boy in our community recently said, how can ISIS hinder Muslims? They do everything opposite of what we are taught to do. They take everything that is beautiful and make it ugly. So it's a really good description of how we view ISIS. And a simple way to remember it maybe is as an analogy, is to maybe say the KKK is to Christianity what ISIS is to Islam. Thank you.
There's a handout each of you should have received, and it has a lot of these topics summarized for your benefit as well. I know it's very substantive. So we just answered in these last two presentations, what isn't Islam? What isn't Islam? Trying to clean away some of those concepts so we can now approach with an objective, not a skeptical mindset, but an objective mindset. What is Islam? So our next panelist, Dr. Asad Tarsin, is an ER physician that works in Walnut Creek, saving lives every day. He's also an author of the book, Being Muslim, A Practical Guide. This is a book that was published about a year ago, and it has everything one needs to know to practice Islam from A to Z. As you will see, he succinctly summarizes in his talk. I would frame today almost as the core of what's presented. Unfortunately, we have to kind of clean up the mess before we can get into this. They say if there's a feather close to your eye, you can't see the mountain. So we just moved some of the feathers, hopefully, and now Dr. Asad Tarsin will show us the beauty of the mountain of this thing, this religion, this tradition, Islam. Please welcome Dr. Asad.
Hello, and good afternoon, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. Does everybody want to join me for a small stand stretch break? Sort of as our halfway point, halftime. Right. And I'm actually sort of notorious for being a pacer, so I'm going to stand while I give my presentation. If that's okay. All right, so whenever you feel comfortable, let's get started here. So my job here today is to try to summarize the entire religion of Islam, which is a very rich tradition with 14 centuries of history in about the next 15 minutes. So we'll begin. So I like to start off with some definitions. So the first is Islam. What is the word Islam? So Islam is the proper name of the religion that we follow. Islam is an Arabic word, a Semitic word, so it comes from these trilateral roots. So the root of the word Islam is from the word salima, which means to be whole or to be peaceful. The word Islam itself, if you were to use the word Islam linguistically, it would mean to surrender oneself over to. If you said, oh, he's in a state of Islam about his job, right? He's just completely surrendered himself over to the affair. So the word Islam means to turn oneself over to, but its root means peace and wholeness. A Muslim is an adherent. So I'd say, I'm a Muslim, right? That is the title for someone who is an adherent of the religion of Islam. It means, by extension, one who has willingly surrendered themselves over to the will of God. Okay? It is not specific to any ethnicity, any language, any race. People who are Muslim can be from all walks of life. I have a few examples here. Can anybody name, one of them has his name sort of behind him, but who's that on the top left? Anybody able to recognize? Cat Stevens, right? So he's British. Now goes by use of Islam. The bottom one, I'm hoping everyone here recognizes. Otherwise, I don't know if I'll allow you to stay for the rest of my life. Muhammad Ali, I'm a huge fan. Muhammad Ali, who we lost last year, great American hero, Dr. Oz. So as you can see, the race, ethnicity can vary, but Islam as a message is something that's universal that can be applied everywhere. But what the implications of the words Islam and Muslim are that one who surrenders himself willingly to God will find peace and wholeness in his or her life. So that is where these meanings come together. Islam. And so to continue with definitions, another word is the word Allah. And there's a lot of misinformation about the word Allah. Allah is simply the Arabic name for God, the God of Abraham. So this here, I've taken off of the internet here. This is the Bible, and it's the book of Genesis in Arabic. And if anybody here speaks Arabic or can read Arabic, you'll see that it says, in the beginning, Allah created the heavens and the earth. So the Christian Arabs will use the term Allah. If you said to a Christian or a Jew who spoke Arabic, is Allah a God other than the God of Abraham, they'd probably get a chuckle out of it. The fact that it would be a different God than the God of Abraham is something that nobody would think, because even Christians refer to Jesus as Ibn Allah, the son of Allah. So Allah is simply the Arabic for God. Can I have the next slide? So, how does Islam view itself? Sometimes that's an important thing to understand, how a religion views itself. Islam sees itself as the culmination and completion of a previous succession of religions. There's a beautiful tradition from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he speaks in parables like many prophets do. He says that the parable of my coming is like a large and beautiful building that everybody walks around, they're marveling at the beauty of this building, and they say, wow, what a beautiful building, except it's just missing that one brick. And he says, I am that last brick. I am the final brick. And so Muslims do not view Islam as something that destroys everything that was before it and it erects something in its place, which I think is a very important philosophical position to start from. It recognizes the contribution of religions and other traditions that came before it, and it can also recognize the truth of the religions that preceded it. There is another important concept that must be stated. Islam, which you guys already know, means to surrender oneself willingly. It is clear then that all of the previous bricks in this building that was built by God were all in a state of surrender to God, right? And so what a Muslim would say is that they would believe that all of those who follow God's message were in a state of surrender to God. So it's very common to hear a Muslim saying, those people who were on the ark with Noah, they were Muslims. They don't mean followers of the Prophet Muhammad, because obviously they preceded him by several thousand years. But what do they mean? They mean people in a state of surrender to God. So it is a universal way of being to surrender oneself over to God. So the religion is not named after a person or the founder or an ethnicity right? It's named after a way of being, okay? And so the last thing I wanted to talk about is that there's a very famous tradition of the Prophet Muhammad which states that every people were sent a prophet. So we believe that God did not leave anyone on earth, Aboriginal peoples, the native peoples, every continent there is. Wherever there were people, God sent them a message. So what does that mean for us? What it means is that when we meet people of other faith traditions, we acknowledge that there may be some remnant of that truth that they had, right? So we can find another religion which we will disagree with and say, this doctrine is wrong and that doctrine is wrong, but that right there, that sounds like a nugget of wisdom that still remains. And so the ability to coexist with other religions for Muslims comes much more naturally and easily than if Islam believed that everything else before it was simply false until God sent the Prophet Muhammad. So we definitely believe that there was guidance sent by God to every people on earth. So what I would like to cover the essence of the religion. So that was a bit of setting the stage. How does Islam view itself? What does Islam mean? How does Islam see other religions? Now I simply want to talk about the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. The quiz at the end of this talk will cover 3 things. Okay, if you get these 3 words, you'll pass the test. So Islam has 3 dimensions: faith, conduct, and character. All right, faith, conduct, and character. And I'm going to go through each of these in some detail here. So the Prophet Muhammad taught us about a way to conduct ourselves. And this is most famously encapsulated. Who's heard of the 5 pillars of Islam? About half. Okay. The 5 pillars of Islam are not really a complete summary of the religion. They're a summary of the devotional acts of the religion. Pillars of action. So in our conduct, we have been given 5 pillars that serve as the foundation of the rest of our conduct. So the first is what are called the 2 testimonies of faith. This is how a person enters into the religion of Islam. Okay? All you have to do is to believe and to state that you believe that there's nothing worthy of worship save God. Right? And that's very 10 Commandment, Old Testament, there's only one God, the God of Abraham. Right? And then to continue, it says that I believe that the Prophet Muhammad is his final messenger. Now, included in that, and we'll talk about this in some detail, is that you have to believe in all of the other prophets. Right? So if the Prophet Muhammad says he's the final brick, you can't say, I am a follower of the Prophet Muhammad, but I don't know about Jesus, or I don't know about Moses, or I don't know about Jacob, right? Or Joseph. Right? You have to accept all of them. So that's the first, is to state that. The second is the 5 daily prayers. So at 5 different points throughout the day, based on the position of the sun, just at dawn, noon, afternoon, sunset, and at night, Muslims wash themselves and they perform a prayer to God. Right? And this is a reorientation that happens throughout the day. And although you have the window of time, even if you're busy at work, I'll be in the ER myself, and I'll be seeing patients, and people know when I would disappear down the corridor and go into the sleep room, right? They know that, Dr. Tarsin is 5 minutes for his prayer, and he'll be back. But that reorientation helps to bring purpose back into your life. Helps to remind you that God is in control of everything, right? The third is a purifying charity. That everyone who is above a certain poverty level has to give 2.5% of their savings, of everything that's left over. Not your income, right? Much nicer than Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam hits us in every direction. This is just your savings. If something stays unused after 1 year, 2.5% of that has to be given in charity. That's the minimum. Anything beyond that is optional. And then the fourth, which interestingly enough today is the first day of the month of Ramadan. So Muslims are to fast from dawn until sunset. Okay? And what that means is that there's no food, no drink, or no intimacy from dawn until sunset. And unless there are exceptions. So for example, if someone is sick, they can break the fast. If somebody is elderly and frail, they can break the fast. If a woman is pregnant or nursing, she can break the fast. Traveling is also an exception to that. But we're in the month of Ramadan now. And so we know Muslims, for the next 29 or 30 days, they will be observing this fast. Now, this outward fast, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this pillar today, just because today is the first day of Ramadan. But this outward fast mirrors something going on internally, right? We all know how hard it is to discipline ourselves with the stomach, right? I'm hoping it's not just me here, right? We all know that? Yeah. And so, that's because that's what our egos thrive on. We want things, and then we take them. We see that cookie, and we snatch it. And this is the struggle that Mike was talking about. And so the spiritual fast is that our souls mirror what our bodies are doing. So if my body is not doing everything that it wants to do, trust me, I've looked at this water in front of me a few times today, right? And I'm already having that caffeine withdrawal headache going, right? But if I start to develop the discipline to withhold that desire, what happens when someone upsets me? Am I therefore more able to control my temper? What happens when I get jealous about something? Am I able to suppress that? And so the internal fast is to discipline my soul in a way where my behavior is not simply my ego lashing out in every which way that it desires. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. The fifth pillar of conduct is the pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. So there's a structure in the city of Mecca built by the patriarch Abraham and Ishmael that every Muslim, if they're physically and financially able, once in a lifetime must make pilgrimage to the sites that Abraham built and visited along with Hagar and Ishmael. So these are the pillars of practice. Now everything we do in our lives, every act, has to be in conformity with the will of God, right? So in addition to these pillars, obviously, that means we don't lie, we don't steal, we don't cheat, we don't harm other people. All of these things are the moral code of the Sharia that Hina was talking about. And in Sharia, you have to live a just, right, and upright and moral life. Okay, so that's what the conduct is. The second dimension after conduct is faith. So we said faith, conduct, and character. I did conduct first, but faith, conduct, and character. Faith are things that every Muslim must believe in. This is, every Muslim agrees to believe in these things. The first is a bit obvious, God. Right? And this is the God of Abraham. I feel like I've talked about that a little bit already. The second are the angels. Muslims believe in the angels. Gabriel, Michael, Azrael, right? That we believe that there are these beings in another dimension that God created, but they interact with our world in various ways. Then we believe in Scripture. So we believe that God communicates messages to all of us through Scripture. Now there have been lost scriptures, but we know of 4. So all Muslims affirm belief in the Torah, the Psalms, the Gospel, and the Quran. Now, we've already talked about the 124,000 prophets, so clearly we believe in messengers from God. There are 25 who are named that every Muslim must affirm. So out of that 124,000, most of those are unknown to us. But 25 are given by name, right? So every Muslim must believe, and I'm going to talk about Jesus in a moment, but must believe in Noah, they must believe in David, they must believe in Joseph and Jacob, right? We have to believe in all of these people as messengers. So we affirm their being a messenger. For the person of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, there are some differences with Trinitarian Christianity and Islam. Muslims affirm that Jesus is the awaited Messiah, that he was born of a virgin birth miraculously, that he spoke from the cradle, that he turned water into wine, that he raised the dead, and that he healed the sick, etc. We affirm all of these miracles, and we believe that he's coming back at the end of time to battle the Antichrist. So in these things, we share with the dominant Christian narrative. However, Muslims believe that although he's the Messiah, that's not a divine position. That he was a messenger and the Messiah. That is an office assigned by God. So it would mirror the earlier Unitarian Christian movements that were around. Muslims would be more in conformity with that. And the Muslim understanding, the incarnation of the divine and the Trinity would be a violation of not setting up partners besides God. So in that sense, they would say he is the Son of God in a metaphorical sense, meaning he's a godly man, but he's not God the Son in the literal sense. So that's a point of an important point of departure for us. And then we believe that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger. He says that with me, that house of prophecy is complete, and this office is closed. And God's message for the end of time has been completed. And then the last two, we believe in a day of judgment, that each of us will be resurrected and held accountable for what we did in our lives, so that nobody gets away with anything, but we hope for mercy. And then we believe in the divine decree. We believe that nothing in this world happens outside of God's willing it to be. All of us being gathered here in this room today was from the design of God. There's a famous story written by the great poet Rumi, where he talks about this ant that's crawling along a great big Persian rug. And this ant is looking down and it sees, oh, well, this is a green carpet. And continues to walk along and sees, oh, suddenly, wait, it's red, wait, now it's blue, now it's turquoise. And it seems to the ant that these colors are changing randomly. And he says, who made this ugly carpet? What a silly thing to do, to change colors. And then Maulana Rumi says, you know, this poor small-minded ant doesn't see the great design behind the carpet. That's a metaphor for us. Sometimes we go through things, we experience things, and we don't see the great design behind it until much later in life. Sometimes not even in life, and maybe we'll find out later. But there is a great design, and this is all under the control of the Almighty. So that's faith, conduct. Now we'll get to character. In order to truly understand character, in order to completely understand character, we have to understand the Islamic view of the human being. What are we? So on the one hand, we believe that we all have a basic nature, a primary nature, and that's called the fitrah in Arabic. This primary nature is a good nature, that each of us knows truth and beauty and goodness when we see it, and in fact, we're drawn to it. So when we see a beautiful sunset, every one of us has to stop and just say, did you see the moon last night? Wasn't that beautiful? What is that in us? Now, you might like sushi and hate burritos. That's a matter of taste. But we all know, right? But we all can agree that certain things are simply stunningly beautiful. Right? Why is that? Why are we so varied in the clothes that we like, and the food that we like, and the music that we like? But we know beauty, and we know truth, and we know goodness. Why do we feel guilty when we do something? Right? We would say that that is our primary nature, that that's imprinted upon our souls. Now, in addition to this, we have the ego. So that's the flip side of who we really are. Right? So this is a part of us that we all know is there, that's selfish, that really is concerned with being angry when it's harmed and fulfilling its passions, right? This is the part of us that leads to the road of temptation. And much of what we do in our development of our character is about suppressing our ego and enhancing our primary nature. Our soul has this good nature, but our egos get in the way of it sometimes. And if we, there's that great Native American proverb where, I'll summarize it, where, there's the gray wolf and the white wolf. And one represents anger and evil, and one represents truth and goodness, and they continue to fight. And the only one that is stronger will win. And so the young boy says to his father, which wolf will win? And he says, which one will be stronger? He says, whichever one you feed. Whichever one you feed, right? And so if you feed the ego will overshadow to the point that one can almost forget that they have this good nature. But if you feed the good nature and starve the ego, then we'll talk about that. So that's the process of purifying the soul. It is by suppressing the ego and removing any negative attributes of character, and then beautifying ourselves and adorning ourselves with good character. So we get rid of vices, and we acquire virtue. Okay, so every one of us here has been jealous before, angry before, so we have to fight that. And then, it's hard to be generous sometimes. Like, you've got something really good, but, he needs it too, and we say, hey, you know what, here, man, have it, take it, it's yours. That takes effort. And that's part of the process of purifying the soul. Then there's also this concept that's important of asceticism. That this world, the same way we have physical gravity, what does physical gravity do to us? It brings us down, right? That there's a spiritual gravity to this place. That if we let ourselves run loose, we can get lost in the temptation and the fulfilling of passions and desires to the point that we can forget about what's above us. And so we have to engage in a degree of asceticism. And this is what I would term a moderate asceticism. That Muslims are not called upon to live a monastic life in the hills, and that's the only way to escape the ill effects of the world. We are to be in the world, but not to be of the world. Right? We are to have money in our hands, but not in our hearts. And that's the moderate asceticism. And then if we do that, then we'll be able to value our relationships with others more than we value our possessions. Right? But now, if you feed the ego, the opposite can happen. Can I have the next slide, please? So, in summation, to review here, Islam is the culmination of previous religious traditions, and it brings peace and harmony to the self and society by surrendering to God. And Islam views itself as a middle road of the previous traditions. That while certain traditions took on a particular flavor, Islam sees itself as the Prophet Muhammad, he merged the great, rich legal tradition of the Jewish faith along with the spiritual, higher calling of the Christian faith. So a simple example is, the most common one referred to as the eye for an eye, right? That's an Old Testament commandment, right? An eye for an eye, whereas Christ taught us to forgive and to turn the other cheek. Islam would say that we have to implement justice. So if someone is harmed, we have to have eye for an eye. But the higher calling that we call themselves to voluntarily do is to forego it and say, you know what, that's okay to forgive. So both are merged and preserved, right? So I can't go to someone who was beaten up by a neighbor and say, no, come on, you should forgive them. We can't impose that on a victim, right? But we can encourage the victim and say, if you forgive someone, right? If my property is stolen, you should be talking to the thief, not to me, right? So we have to preserve justice on the worldly level. But as individuals, we have the spiritual chance, opportunity to forgive others. And so that's how we merge these two. Because I think we all know that if we all turned the other cheek, we would have a police force or an army, or right? And that alone would lead to havoc. But that is what Islam is in our understanding. So the final culmination of all of the world religions is in Islam, with all of these teachings and the great balancing of the inward and the outward. I thank you for your attention. Thank you for coming out.
I felt lucky to be here to listen to that. Beautifully, concisely, succinctly put together. And again, a lot of these core concepts are in that handout that you've received. Shifting gears a little bit to our final panelist. Question, who knows the first country to recognize the existence of the United States? Morocco. Morocco. Yes, interesting. In the War of Independence, there were Muslims fighting alongside. One of them, historical records show his name was Bambit Muhammad. Bambit Muhammad. And so Muslims have been in this blessed land for a very long time. And Sara Kim, our final panelist, is bringing it together and showing how being American and being Muslim can be successfully intertwined, can be beautifully intertwined. They're not mutually exclusive. You don't need to pick one. Sara Kim is a mother of 7. She operates, runs, manages a ranch in Lafayette, bustling with activities for children. And I will invite her to share her story with all of us today. Please welcome Sara Kim.
So I just want to start by thanking you all for being here. I know Matthew already did that, but it's really from my heart that I thank you, because we can assemble this panel and, write these speeches and talks to share with you what Islam is all we want, but it wouldn't really matter if nobody showed up to hear us. So it's really humbling to be here and have you guys come on a Saturday afternoon and spend your time listening to us. And I really, from my heart up, wanted to thank you for that. And I'd like to believe that we're all here today because we love our communities, and we love our country, and we love our world. And that we understand that when we seek to know and understand and respect one another, that we're able to elevate ourselves and our respective communities and our beloved country to the highest levels. The title of my talk is How Islam Made Me a Better American. But what does this really mean to be a better American? There are many definitions for this, I would think, but I'm confident there are a set of ideals which resonate with most Americans: compassion, integrity, mutual respect, kindness, generosity, equality. These are all qualities which I think good human beings, good Americans, would strive to embody. But what I would like to speak specifically today about is a topic that I can address with what I hope is a sincere and a passionate heart, and that is the topic of racism. Growing up, I was very close to my paternal grandparents. I would spend summers in North Carolina with them, and since I was an early riser like my grandfather, we would enjoy a daily 7 a.m. breakfast together at the restaurant nestled at the bottom of the mountain where he lived. I was proclaimed his favorite granddaughter, partially because I was named after his eldest daughter, Sara, who had passed away in a tragic car accident the year before I was born. Apparently, I looked like Sara as well, so his affinity towards me was clear and understandable to all. And in return, I deeply adored him. He was a generous man who showered love and affection on all of us. But there was one thing that I remember not knowing how to love about him, and this was his deep-seated racism and hatred for people of color. He openly insulted and disrespected Black people. He frequently used the N-word. I remember being really uncomfortable with his attitude and actions towards Blacks, so naturally I exonerated myself from being racist. In hindsight, however, I realized that the post-civil rights era in the South was still rife with unspoken racism. Though there were African Americans in town and in school, we had very little to do with one another. I didn't have any Black friends, I didn't live near Black people, I didn't sit near Black people in class or at lunch. Basically, there was minimal to no interaction between them and us. Separate but equal may have been banished by law, but it was alive and well in everyday actions, even in my own. In my mind, however, I was all-American as apple pie, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed high school cheerleader. My European ancestors landed on American shores in the early days of settlement. My mother is part Native American. I lived in southern suburbia and was the daughter of a self-made businessman, attending some of the best public schools in the area and church on Sundays. And I had my mind set squarely on attending a service academy after graduation. So who could possibly be more American than me? In 1996, I had completed a couple years at the U.S. Naval Academy before deciding military life was not for me. I transferred to the University of Maryland to get my degree in civil engineering, married my husband Mike, and had our first son then. Mike was still in the Navy and stationed in Japan. I stayed in the States to finish my degree, and it was at this time that I was introduced to Islam. Since my talk is not about my conversion story, I won't go into much detail about how I chose to enter into this religion, but I do want to share with you how being Muslim completely altered my understanding of race. Before I do that, however, I think this would be an appropriate time to share a few of the Islamic teachings regarding race, which come to us via sayings from our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or via verses taken from our holy book, the Quran, which we believe to be the direct word of God, whom we call Allah in Arabic, as Dr. Asad explained to you already. As I share these with you, please keep in mind the opening line of the Declaration of Independence, the document that formed the foundation of our nation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. In Islam, we are taught the same. We are taught that righteousness is the only quality that makes someone virtuous in the sight of Allah, not race, or skin, or lineage, or country. In his last and final public sermon to the Muslims over 1,400 years ago, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, very clearly addressed this concept of racism when he said, "O people, your Lord is one, and your father Adam is one. There is no favoritism of an Arab over a foreigner, nor a foreigner over an Arab, and neither red skin over black skin, or black skin over red skin, except through righteousness." We were also taught by the Prophet Muhammad that God created Adam from handfuls of clay and dirt, collected from the different areas of the earth. So just as the dirt of the earth is different colors, we have black soils, white sand, red clay, the children of Adam come in different colors as well. Finally, the Prophet Muhammad taught us there is no good in red skin or black skin, but that our value lies only in our righteousness and in our closeness to God. So these are just some of the teachings of Islam that slowly began to permeate my life and to help me develop a deeper understanding of the problems with racism. However, there was one crucial time in my life that these teachings really took hold of me and taught me the true essence of what it meant to be an American. My father, at the age of 50, was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor and given 2 months to live. I wanted to take my young son then back home with me to South Carolina so that I could take care of my father in his final days. He readily agreed to have me come home, but firmly warned me against trying to convert him to my new religion. I had become Muslim only 3 months prior. I assured him I would do no such thing, and I headed to South Carolina. Interestingly enough, in a very short period of time, after quietly observing me in my worship and noting my newfound mindfulness that I brought to my day-to-day life, my father began questioning me about my new faith. Facing death, he was forced to think about his own mortality, so he started seeking answers to the questions of what might be coming after death and what had been the real purpose of his life. I tried to answer his questions to the best of my ability, but my own limited knowledge of my new religion couldn't satiate his deep curiosity. He peppered me with questions, and I literally ran out of answers. In desperation to provide him with what he was looking for, I searched for a local Muslim community where I might be able to take him so that he could speak to someone, anyone, who could give him the answers that I simply could not provide. I searched in the phone book, I asked around, nothing. I could find no Muslims anywhere close to us. I was desperate. For days and nights, I prayed to God. And one thing that we learn in Islam is the condition of a prayer is that you have to recognize and submit to the knowledge that only God has the power to answer the prayer. And answer it he did. One morning, my father stumbled across an ad in the local paper announcing the grand opening of an Islamic center in the next town. He eagerly showed it to me, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was truly a miracle. God had sent us some Muslims. That very next Saturday, we drove to Rock Hill, South Carolina to meet these Muslims in the hopes that they could help my father settle the affairs of his soul. To my surprise, and honestly, to my disappointment, we saw that the entire group was comprised of African Americans. Not one other white person was in the entire room. My heart sank, certain that this was a mistake. Deep down, I knew that there was no way my father could be guided to a new belief system through a group of African Americans. It simply wasn't possible. He had been conditioned all of his life to hate them. But another fact we are taught in Islam, God is greater, what you often hear as Allahu Akbar. God is greater than all the limitations we place upon ourselves and the limitations we place upon others. For in fact, when my father emerged from that center, he was a man who had been deeply moved by all those whom he had met. He was a man who received the answers to the questions that had remained unanswered for so long. And he was now a man of the Muslim faith. Through the words and the actions and the sincerity of those whom he had been groomed to hate, he had found acceptance, love, and a faith that he would embrace and practice as a means of drawing closer to his Creator until his death almost 1 year later. May God have mercy on him. This is something Muslims say about those who have passed, similar to when people say, God rest his soul, or may he rest in peace. The Black Muslim community in South Carolina took very good care of my dad and me. They would invite us into their homes every Friday after the congregational prayers. My father would be with the men, and I would hang out with all of the women and the children. The men became an unwavering web of support for my father, teaching him, guiding him, and helping him come to terms with his impending death. While I was comforted by and thrilled with the peace that my father had found, this was actually a momentous turning point for me as well. For the first time in my life, I had Black friends. But they were more than friends to me. They were my sisters. We would pray together, sing together, eat together, and laugh together. It was a beautiful and memorable time in my life. It was a Friday in February, nearly 1 year after my dad's conversion to Islam, when he returned to his Lord. At the time of his passing, my 2-year-old son Ben, an African-American brother named Abdullah, and I were all sitting near his bedside. By the way, Muslim women often often refer to Muslim men as brothers, and the men refer to women as sisters out of respect. So anyway, this brother had come to visit my father so that he could read from the Holy Quran in his presence. Muslims believe that the recitation of the Quranic words in Arabic brings solace to the heart, and the specific reading of the chapter called Yasin helps to ease the soul's passing from this world to the next. So it was through the lips of this black man that these verses aided my father's soul. And it was the brothers from this community who came to pick up his body. And it was they who washed his head and his limbs, who perfumed him, who shrouded him, and who prepared him for his burial. They arranged for the funeral, transported his coffin to the cemetery, lowered his body into the ground, and then prayed over him in accordance with the Islamic rituals of burial. There were rows and rows of black men praying for my father's soul. If only my grandfather had been there to witness that tremendous and powerfully ironic scene. So that was the starting point from which all of my unrealized racism began to melt away. It was at this point that I became truly Muslim and truly American. I understood unequivocally the power of humanity without preconceived notions or discriminatory underpinnings. And upon moving to California, I have continued to be blessed with the most amazing friends and community members from all backgrounds, races, and religions. It is on this premise of mutual respect for all of God's creation that I have found a true kinship with all races and all people. I have been taught that to treat everyone with dignity and respect is an act of worship. And because of our faith, my life and my husband's life and my children's lives have all been elevated. And I hope and pray that we will always be positive contributors to the greater society in which we live. I can surely say with immense gratitude and humility that I am a better human being and a better American for it. And it is my sincerest wish that my children, along with all of the children of our Muslim communities, will lead future generations of Americans based on the premise of God's command to get to know one another in peace and respect, and to create a life that uplifts all that is good and suppresses all that is evil. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, the largest, most diverse annual gathering is where? In Mecca. Yeah, Mecca has become the term now. It's become the Mecca of this, the Mecca of basketball, the Mecca of this, because it represents the joining of all of that. All of the millions of people, the men, whether you're a millionaire or impoverished, you wear 2 white towels, signifying all of our slavery to God. So, we'd like to take a break before our Q&A session, inviting everyone to enjoy some of the refreshments for about, let's say it's 3:19 right now, so 11 minutes. And in the meantime, if anyone has any note cards, if you can please pass them up to the front, and then we'll reconvene at 3:30, and we will engage in the Q&A session. See you guys shortly.
So thank you. This exhibit, the room around you is an exhibit space, and the exhibit currently is done by the AABW, the local chapter here. But how about we get going on our Q&A session here? Can you guys ready?
Thank you, Bria. Welcome back, everyone. All right, so we have about 27 minutes. Which, this is almost the essence of today, because the onus is on each of you to be meaningful and raw and authentic, and speak what's on your mind, speak what's in your heart, so we can leave today having experienced a meaningful moment. So we've received quite a few questions. We're going to do our best to tackle all of them. So, I'll tackle the first one, pretty simple. What is the significance of the head covering for a man? Only one man on the panel is wearing one. So, I'll answer it kind of technically and personally. So technically speaking, this is everything in Sharia, in the Islamic code, there are levels, there are 5 levels. Prohibited, encouraged, permissible, discouraged, and prohibited. So, I'm sorry. Obligatory, encouraged, permissible, discouraged, and prohibited. So everything that a Muslim does falls in one of those. Like, you sleep on your right side, encouraged. You brush your teeth in the morning, at night, encouraged. You fast Ramadan, obligatory. Okay? You don't lie, prohibited. So everything falls in one of those. You have filial piety, take care of your parents, obligatory. Okay? So the hat for a man is encouraged. It's in that second category. Which means if you do it, it pleases God, but if you don't do it, it's not sinful in any way. So it's that second category. That's the technical answer. The personal answer for me, I'm just wearing my American hat. You know? What, it's not American? You guys don't agree? In America it says be yourself and be comfortable, right? You know? So this is what I'm comfortable with, this is myself. So if I take it off, it would be un-American. I wear it every day, and for me, I try to have a moment of mindfulness. For me, this is just my personal way of connecting with submitting, and Islam means submission, surrender, and it's my personal way to remind myself that I'm your slave, God. So when I put it on, I try to have a moment to say, God, you are my owner, you are my master, I am your slave, I live for you. And the second thing I try to keep in mind personally is an identity. I don't want to be embarrassed of being an American Muslim. I don't want to be embarrassed about it. I want to be comfortable about it, and I want to share its beauty. I want to share its beauty. I don't want to live with an inferiority complex, and I don't want to pass that to my daughters. I have 3 daughters. So it's important for me to live, try to the best of my ability, outwardly and inwardly, to bring it together. So that's the significance of the hat. I'll pass the mic to Dr. Asad.
All right. So I like to describe this question and answer session as almost like a game show where you because there's probably about 40 questions here and about 25 minutes. So what does that give us? 30 seconds. And some of these are like PhD thesis level questions. It's like there's books written about some of these things. I'll try my best. So I'll summarize some of these. Some of these are sort of two-sided cards and longer. So one is about Islam protects religious freedom. But how come many Muslim majority countries? How many Muslim? And how many Muslim majority countries protect the right of Christians and other minorities? That seems to be one question, and I think I'll tackle that. The question of religious freedom in Muslim lands is an important one. I think we have to, really be honest with ourselves and say, when you're talking about a 14th century tradition, to look at modern-day Saudi Arabia, a country that hasn't even been around a full century, right? To look at, what's happening, with the Taliban, which after the CIA supported, the Afghan Mujahideen, these are blips on a radar. And if you really want the answers to these questions, I would encourage you to really look further back. And I think you'll see more of Islam's true nature when you do that. In the quote-unquote Muslim world, and that's a very troublesome term because there isn't an area that's a Muslim. There's no Vatican for Muslims in that sense. There is no, while we have our holy cities, Muslims live everywhere. There are many countries that are Muslim majority, but in the places that have historically been predominantly under the control of Muslim governments, or the population has been mostly Muslim, i.e. the Middle East is probably what most of you would be thinking now. If you look at where Christian minorities and Jewish minorities have been for the last millennia, and how they've been doing there, you would be pretty shocked. If you look at a country like Syria, Syria has large Christian populations and churches. In fact, one of the interesting, if you're into this, the Eastern Orthodox churches, that there were some churches that were considered heterodox and couldn't exist in the Byzantine Empire, right? Because the church there would consider them heterodox and they were persecuted there. They came to Muslim lands and they have the churches there. So if you look at the Chaldean church, if you look at many Eastern Orthodox churches that are there, Iraq has a long history of religious pluralism, Syria, Yemen, there's many Jewish communities. Morocco has long-standing Jewish communities. Now, forget the 20th century. I think it's one of the worst centuries we've had as a species, right? Throw that out the window for a second. With 14 centuries, you've got to understand, if we're talking about ISIS harming non-Muslim minorities today, it means they survived 1,400 years untouched, and they were flourishing. They can be oppressed now. There's a little bit of, take a look at it. They can be oppressed now by ISIS because they are still there 1,400 years later. Whereas if you look at what the Inquisition did in Europe, there were no minorities left to be oppressed. So like the Muslims, if you were accused of being a Morisco, right, you could be killed for that, tongues were cut out, all types of things. Religious persecution 500-600 years ago was real. You could do that. You could say, you don't follow my belief system, I have authority, and I will either, Muslim religious pluralism in Muslim Spain, North Africa, the Middle East, all the way up to Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, they're all pluralistic societies. Very few areas in the Muslim world are 100% Muslim. Very few. Particularly if you go back, like I said, just a couple hundred years. So religious pluralism is not just a value that Muslims have, their track record does speak to it. It's not perfect. There are incidents, skirmishes here, this tyrant does this there, someone steals some land there, right? I'm not whitewashing the history, but if you look at it, you'll find these communities flourishing. And I'll end with this because we have many more questions. Anybody here heard of Maimonides? Maimonides. Who's Maimonides? Right? Great Jewish rabbi, theologian, philosopher. Where was Maimonides? Spain. Under whose rule? Muslim rule. And he became a wazir, one of the highest ranking. It's like having, the Secretary of Education in our country today be at Maimonides. So Jews, Christians, all other faiths, they didn't just survive under Islam, they flourished. When you have a mind like Maimonides, and unfortunately this isn't about really, taking any cheap shots, but Europe had that problem early on with the Jews as well. So religious pluralism was a problem for many other areas of the world, but really not so much in the Muslim world. And
Okay, so I have a couple of cards here. One of the questions is, if a Muslim doesn't follow the 5 pillars, is he or she still a Muslim? Yes. If a Muslim doesn't follow the 5 pillars, giving charity, praying 5 times a day, fasting, going on the Hajj, they're still Muslim. What would make them not be a Muslim if they denied any of those 5 pillars? If they said they weren't required or they weren't true. So the first pillar of Islam is to believe in one God and to believe that the Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of God. If you say, no, he wasn't the messenger of God, or I don't believe in God, then no, you're not a Muslim. And so there are many Muslims who believe in God and believe that the Prophet Muhammad was the messenger, but don't necessarily practice life as a Muslim, as an active Muslim. But that does not take them outside of the religion. And if somebody asked Raza Aslan, well, how can you prove that Barack Obama isn't a Muslim? And his father came from a Muslim majority country. He used to be Muslim before he became atheist. And how can you prove to me that Barack Obama isn't a Muslim? And Raza Aslan said, because he says he's not a Muslim. A Muslim is somebody who says they're a Muslim. If you say you're not a Muslim, you're not a Muslim. As simple as that. There's no DNA test. There's nothing to prove other than that. Okay, the other card was curious about Ramadan. Why is it celebrated, observed? Why do the dates change so drastically? So yeah, the month of Ramadan, it's the 9th month according to the lunar calendar. The Muslim calendar is a lunar calendar, whereas the Gregorian calendar, January, February, March, that goes according to the sun. So every year, the Muslim months move up 11 days. So Ramadan does rotate throughout the years. So around like I remember celebrating Ramadan in the summer when I was a little girl, and now like 30 years later, I'm back to that time again, where Ramadan is again now in the summer. We fast in Ramadan. You know, people come up with all sorts of theories that it's so that we know what it's like for poor people to be hungry, but poor people also fast. So the bottom line is we fast because God tells us to fast. He tells us to, curb our desires, and one of the understandings is that, drinking water and eating food, these are all things that are permissible. But the fact that we stop ourselves from taking what's permissible for an entire month, and the hope is that it'll be easier to stop ourselves from approaching the impermissible, right? If you train yourself that you're not going to drink something as pure as water, then hopefully you won't take on other things that are worse than that for you, right? How can I help support my adult students who are praying and fasting? Very compassionate question. You don't have to give up eating and drinking because somebody is fasting around you. Maybe the thing that's appreciated the most is if they need time to pray and they're a student in your class. I remember I used to take an evening class in college, and my professor had a very strict rule that you couldn't eat in class. But the month of Ramadan came, and I had to break my fast, and I didn't know what to do. And I finally told him, and he made an exception for me. So every day I would look at the clock, and I would pull out my little date, and I would eat it. And I used to feel like I should announce to the class what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, because I know they all thought that I was just breaking the rules, behind the teachers, thinking that the professor didn't know what I was doing, but he actually did. How has being Muslim in America changed for you with the Trump administration? Definitely there are more incidents of Islamophobia now on the streets. People feel like they have more permission to really say some vile and vulgar things because of what's been happening on the national stage. However, I'm starting to realize more and more that Trump has been a little bit of a mixed blessing for Muslims, because all of a sudden people are wanting to know more about Muslims, are wanting to know the truth, don't want to just have information force-fed to them through propaganda. They actually want to meet Muslims and hear from themselves what they believe and what they practice. So in that sense, it's, and I think with President Trump, there are a lot of people who don't recognize themselves in him. So when he says things that are pretty considered to be bigoted, they reject it. And they're like, no, I don't recognize that, and I want to know the truth. Whereas if it was somebody a little bit smoother and savvier and, saying the same things but with nicer vocabulary, it might be easier to say, okay, I see myself in that person, and if he believes that, maybe it's the truth. So it has been a blessing, believe it or not, in some ways. So still praying for the best.
Okay, so the question is, how does one attend a service in a mosque? There's no set way. Our services are on Fridays, usually around lunchtime. So you can go to the website of a local masjid and find out what time the service is, and you can just go. You might feel a little out of place. There's no chairs in a mosque, so everyone sits on the floor. We do take our shoes off, so that would be expected if you were to go in. And hopefully somebody would just come up and introduce themselves and ask if they can help you get settled. Or some mosques also have outreach people who actually work for the masjid, and you can contact them and they can give you more formal introduction to the service. Any of us could also help you. So if after this you actually are interested in visiting a mosque, you could let us know. We can help you figure that out. What is the biggest mistake that we as non-Muslims make when talking to you or approaching you? Nothing really. The only thing I can think of was that sometimes if you approach a woman who's wearing a headscarf, you may assume that they don't speak English, and that's obviously not the case. case. And you also may assume that that they don't want to talk to you, because as Hina said, it is a barrier. That's what it is, but it's not a barrier for normal communication. We do want to talk to you. We love when people come up and say hello. It's actually really heartening, and it's been happening more and more with what's going on with Trump. It actually, people are reaching out quite a bit more. The other thing is that generally Muslim men and women don't shake hands with one another. So that's like a very normal custom in American society. So that would be the one thing that you could reach out your hand, and maybe that person wouldn't really necessarily want to take it, but they may or may not, depending on their level of comfort. So that would just be something to keep in mind if you were speaking to Muslim. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. What is the most important response? Okay, so the question is, what is the most important response to give when I overhear false statements about Islam or Muslims? How do I even begin? That's a really tough question, because obviously we've been here for 2 hours and we're still talking. So there's a lot of myths to dispel and a lot of information to share. I think the most important thing, if you just had 5 seconds, is to say, how many Muslims have you met? How many do you actually know? How many do you actually talked to? And just encourage them to find somebody who really is a Muslim and talk to them. And if they do that, hopefully they'll learn something other than what they're hearing on the news.
We're going to go from hard to easy. So the question is, are there Sharia courts in the UK? The answer is no. As we talked about, there are no Sharia courts sanctioned by Islamic law itself in a country such as ours, in the UK, or in Europe, anywhere. There are no Sharia courts. The ISIS, are ISIS Muslim? If not, do you denounce them? We absolutely denounce them. And if you were to ask a person who's ISIS, are you Muslim? What do you think they'll say? Yes. I'm not here to judge anybody. I don't know who's one or not. I can't answer that question. But if you were to ask them, they would say they are Muslim. But in my view, in our view, the 1.7 billion, 1 in 4 human beings on earth would disagree that they practice the teachings of Islam. And this is a statement from the questioner which says, Christians denounce the KKK. They are not Christian. I agree. We denounce ISIS. We don't believe that they're following Islam. So just as you denounce the KKK for your Christian tradition, we do the same to ISIS. By the way, just a lot of these are just casual moments of logic, right? 1.7 billion Muslims. It's not possible that 1 in 4 human beings on earth is a whack job. That would be really absurd, right? So a lot of times it's just kind of common sense stuff. And it's a height of ignorance to assume something particular about religion, which is so important, with no information. So the question of, do you know Muslim, is a really good question, right? Why presuppose all this stuff about what Islam or is not, when there's not been a single conversation with anybody who knows what Islam is or is not? So let me see here. Is there a hierarchical structure to Islam like Catholicism? No, there's not. There is no bishop, pope, cardinal, that type of structure. What we do have is we have recognized scholars, because we recognize that, and they're strenuously authenticating the scholarship, which there's a chain of transmission in their teaching by an accredited, qualified teacher all the way back to Prophet Muhammad. The reason why that's of utmost importance is because we're talking about nothing more important in human existence. If you do believe in God and the afterlife, what is more important? If we're going to spend time researching the surgeon who's going to do heart surgery on you, or the plumber's going to fix your house, those are temporal things. We are talking about the afterlife, eternity. So who we take our Islam from, the quality of the scholars, is of the utmost importance. So that's what we have, as opposed to a hierarchical system. The last question is, does the ignorance of the public, if sincerely, humbly expressed, bother you? Absolutely not. I mean, I'm humbled by the fact that you guys are right here and wanting to learn about this. So you can ask away, and there's nothing that would bother us. I'm speaking of us, no matter what message you have or concepts or statements you may have. Thank you.
I have a question. What can we who are not Muslim do to support you in this current environment? And I don't think there's any large-scale things that any one of us can do, but everyone who just does something little can end up with a big effect. So, like the other question, what do I say when I overhear somebody saying things that are incorrect about Islam? Just, put it back on them just to think about it a little bit more, or to, like I said, encourage them to talk to someone who is Muslim. And if everybody just even dispels some of the myths with one person, and then that person does with another person, it just spreads. So, and the handout that we gave you also has some information. Apparently it has something on there. There's a lot of books as well if you want to know more. There's a lot of book suggestions.
Just ignore all the books, just get Dr. Asad's work. Being Muslim, practical guy.
The whole, I just want to make one comment on the whole Trump phenomenon, and just more in a general sense, not specifically about Trump, but one of our great presidents in the past said there's nothing to fear but fear itself. We remember that, right? Now, if you think about it, it's a very profound concept, because when the population, when our nation is blanketed with fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of this, the fear of that, it renders us intellectual paralysis. Our thinking stops, and our critical thinking stops, most importantly. So one of the byproducts of a policy of fear is intellectual paralysis. And vibrant intellectual community is the foundational source of democracy. Our democracy does not work unless we think and we question, right? So we have to really guard ourselves against being affected into paralysis by the policy of fear. When you're in an airport, they say yellow alert. Well, what the hell am I supposed to do? Grip my luggage tighter? I mean, what does that mean, right? It's just everywhere around us. There's triggers for why we should be fearful. We have to guard ourselves against being fearful.
So really quick, because we're running out of time. So I've heard Muslim women on television say that the wearing of the hijab is a social, not a theological practice. Can you comment? The basis of the hijab is religious, but people do things culturally, definitely. That people will wear the scarf because it's the norm in their community, and they'll leave the country, and when they're traveling in Europe or America, they will take it off. But the basis of the hijab is religious. And are there not killings and cutting off of limbs performed every Friday in Saudi Arabia? No, I actually grew up in Saudi Arabia. My father was transferred as an engineer from Southern California, and so we spent 8-9 years living there. And we would hear about it occasionally, that the penal code punishment was implemented there. Not every Friday though, and when it did happen, it was pretty big news. But that's their law. It's not an Islamic thing. They can sell things in the guise of religion, but once again, the majority of scholars say that there's a moratorium on penal code punishments in Islam.
Thank you, Hina. I'll just share that there's 6,235 verses in the Quran. 6,235. Only 30 of them have to do with punishments of this sort. So there's 6,205 verses that are not related to punishments. So it's a little to reorient ourselves to see Islam. I have a quick question, kind of tandem, Mike, about Sharia law being implemented in some courts in the East Coast. And is this true or false? The answer is it's false. I am a lawyer, so I know a little bit about this. Our American legal system is dynamic and flexible enough to allow private parties to agree on a certain code that applies in civil cases, okay, civil cases, such as, for example, marriage. Well, is this a valid marriage under California law? Well, we can accept it as a valid marriage under California law because these parties are Muslim and it's binding according to them, and they accept it under Islamic law. For example, it was performed by an imam. So that's a symbol. It's also, there's also rabbinical codes. The Muslims actually follow the Jewish community in trying to help get this for some of the personal issues that Muslims face for now. And our last set of questions with Dr. Asad, and then we'll conclude with the short prayer.
So rapid fire, I apologize for the brevity of the question. If I don't answer your question sufficiently, you can come up afterwards, but I want to respect everyone's time. This question was, have Christianity and Islam been in conflict since the Crusades? And if so, is this just another cycle of Islam conflict? No, I don't think so. And I think my comments about Christian communities living in harmony with Muslim communities in the Middle East and the historical track record proves that it's not an inherent thing. It's up to us how we all get along. It's sort of like, does every marriage have to be a bad marriage? Well, we have two people who don't want to get along that can end in conflict pretty easily. This question is, how does Islam view life after death, or explain life after death? So we believe, not too differently from the Jewish and Christian faiths, we believe in a resurrection and an afterlife, and this afterlife goes on perpetually for the rest of eternity. And we do believe in an abode of reward, heaven, and an abode of punishment, which is hell. Some people who, live mixed lives, which all of us do to some extent, can spend a certain amount of time being punished and eventually be released into heaven as a reward. But all of these things are things that are unknown to us. And God in His infinite mercy and justice will be the sole judge of. So while we may believe that this thing is punishable, we can't say about any specific person whether or not they will be punished or rewarded for that matter. So these things will all be left to God, and we believe that He is the most merciful the most merciful. Last question is the statement about some remnant of truth from God, is that viewed disingenuous? We define the truth of past religion from your own viewpoints. Very good question. Yes, this is definitely, I don't think it's disingenuous. I've stated quite frankly that Islam sees itself as the final culmination of previous religions. And one of the names for the Quran given in the Quran, so our holy book is called the Quran, but it's one of the terms it uses to refer to itself is that this book is the criterion. So it becomes a criterion to know what actually happened. So there were many cases that were brought before the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to just, by way of example, Christians and Jews were different about a point. They would come to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and then the Quran would be revealed to answer that question. Islam does view the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the final religion and the full version of the truth. And anything that would conflict with that would be seen as an inaccuracy that crept in over time. That is definitely how Muslims view that our religion. It is the truth as revealed by God in its complete form. So, thank you.
That is the end of our Q&A. Before we conclude with a short prayer, I believe I'm going to recite a few verses from the Quran. I'd like to invite the Executive Director.
First, let me thank all of you for coming out today. This place is the community gallery, and it invites members of our community to tell us, invite us to share, to bring us ideas of what we can say and do and display in this space. And 2 years ago, members of the community said, we've got to talk about this. And I appreciate their suggestion, but I also appreciate their insistence that we talk about our community, that this place was once called Eden Township before we had all of our municipalities saying, this is Castro Valley, or this is San Lorenzo, or this is even Hayward. And 60 years ago, this place started gathering everybody's history and stories. It is not only history, it is also culture. And so in this place, this important conversation is one of those we'd like to have with you, our community. And so if there are other folks that we need to talk to, would you tell us? If there are other things we need to be paying attention to, will you share that with us? And by all means, come again. Right around the corner, through the children's gallery and into the back is our special gallery, and the exhibition there is called Unmentionables. And it's the material that people in our community who live here have gathered, have given to the Historical Society, but we haven't necessarily had a context to show it. So if you've never seen Nazi memorabilia, it's in that room. If you haven't seen depictions of African Americans as colors eating watermelon, it's in that room. If you haven't seen medical instruments, a variety of these, they're there, and also undergarments, unmentionables, are displayed there too. So there's a range of stuff that we talk about, a range of stuff we try to ignore and not pay attention to, but especially these days, we need all to be awake, we all need to be talking, we all need to find understanding. And so I want to take a moment for all of us to thank the panel today. And I want to thank all of you for being open to listening.
Thank you. Please show your love. Thank you for those words, for bringing it together. We're all striving to increase the beauty in our sphere of influence. We all want to be vessels of beauty. We all want to, wherever we go, we want people to be happy. Not like some people, whenever they go, people are happy. So this is our attempt to make America a more beautiful place, to contribute to our time in history, and try to make our time in history a little more beautiful. You know, there's a lot going on, and you guys coming here today is very, very meaningful. We don't have to agree on everything, which is fine, but we've achieved something beautiful today. I think everyone can agree that coming here today, spending these couple hours on this Saturday, was an achievement of beauty. So we thank the Society for having us here. We're all part of the human family. We're all part of the American family with our forefathers. And we have some crazy uncles and crazy cousins, but we still have to invite them for Thanksgiving and invite them for Christmas. We have to smile, and we get along, and be beautiful and civil. So I'm going to conclude with a short recitation of a prayer. Feel free to participate as you feel comfortable. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا إنك جامع الناس ليوم لا ريب فيه إن الله لا يخلف الميعاد. رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. Our Lord, our Creator, our God, we ask you to restore tranquility and serenity and peace and love in our own selves, and in our marriages, and in our homes, and in our communities, and in our countries, and in our continents, and in our world. Our Lord, we turn to you and ask you, the all-merciful, the most compassionate, the most gentle, the all-knowing, the one who says, be, and it is. We ask you, God, to bless and bring beauty into this country, and to all of those who are oppressed throughout the world. We turn to you, asking you in your power and your might to take care of our needs, to help elevate us inwardly and outwardly, physically and spiritually, and help us to see the truth as the truth, and follow it, and falsehood as falsehood, and protect us from it. And we ask you to protect our parents and our loved ones and our children and our offspring. And we ask you, dear God, to accept this gathering as a gathering that you are pleased with, and bring much good from it. We ask you to protect the city, to protect this county, to protect all of those who have worked to put this beautiful gathering together, to bless them. And you know their needs, and you know our needs. And we ask you in your power, and your might, and your majesty, and in your ability, and your gentleness, and in your love, and in your mercy, to turn to us and to look at us, and to take care of those needs, even in spite of our deficiencies, in spite of our sins, in spite of our faults, in spite of our blameworthiness. We ask you to purify our hearts with gentleness, ease, and well-being. And we ask you, God, you know what is best for us, to give it to us and to give us contentment with it. Ameen, 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 amen. And send peace and blessings in all the prophets and all the messengers that you sent to us, and all praise is